Hey, howdy party people. So, today we're going to be talking about Hytale's Biomes. A bunch of news just dropped today, so this is really good timing for me, because I've been trying to make this video for a while. So if you've been wondering about what kind of biomes we can expect to see in Hytale and what the current state of the zones is, this video should be perfect for filling you in. Hytale has a handful of known biomes and some environments that have yet to be specifically confirmed as biomes, given that they could be features or prefabs of a biome rather than being a biome themselves. A lot of the information in this video is based on outdated information and concept art, and some of it is pulled from the wiki, so some of it will probably be outdated upon the launch of early access, and a lot of it probably isn't quite accurate. I just thought you all might like to know what we've seen over the course of the past 7 years, and some of this information is very, very new, so just bear that in mind as we go along. The world of Orbis is divided into zones, which are comprised of multiple different regions and biomes, usually following a central theme or a set of environmental elements. There will seemingly be patterns of gameplay systems to act as milestones in the game's progression, with specific bosses and elemental crystals appearing in screenshots of each biome. Speaking of elements, each zone is themed around a particular element. Zone 1. Zone 1, or the elemental wilds, are themed around the element of Earth. As such, they feature typical temperate biomes similar to what you might see in alpha versions of Minecraft or My Backyard. It's also the place you'll spawn in for your exploration gameplay if the number 1 in the title didn't give it away. The drifting plains are exactly what they sound like. Lots of wide, flat, open areas with a layer of grass covering dirt, which is covering stone. The top layer is decorated with grass, flowers, and the occasional trees. You'll also see a handful of critters such as boars, cows, cats, dogs, chickens, birds, deers, rabbits, foxes, and many more. This biome seems to feature a lot of prefabs like ruined turrets and houses. The forest biome seems to have a lot of just that. Forests. There's a lot of trees. There seem to be more dirt patches not covered by grass. This may be due to woodland creatures stepping on the soil here, or the lesser amount of sunlight available with the shade provided by the trees. This biome appears to be the main place, if not the only place, you can find Quebec villages. This makes sense given the Quebecs live in trees, which also play a big part in their life cycle. If you aren't familiar, this is one of the main NPC factions in the game, and they pretty much act as a mascot for it. They're little woodland tree people with a distinct culture and lifestyle. They mostly live in tree houses of varying size. And they come in a few different varieties of their own, such as the Razor Leaf Warriors or the Elders. Swamps are the watery lands where mangrove-style trees grow and aquatic monsters such as the Gillman-inspired Fenstalker lie in wait. There's thick mist and fog, even thicker trees. It's raining in many of the screenshots we have of swamp biomes, so it's possible that rain is more frequent here, assuming Hytale has that kind of localized weather. You can also find mossworms here. Notably, I don't think you'll see much in the way of vines or roots here, as they reserve a lot of that for some of the areas in Zone 4. Non-snowy mountains may not necessarily be biomes, but are more of a terrain feature I thought I would mention in case they feature different mob spawns or structures. I think it's safe to assume these remain a part of the game and will continue to after World Gen V2 is implemented. Similarly, there will be ravines, lakes, rivers, and possibly shorelines, but keep in mind we don't know a lot about how the ocean will generate around the world of Orbis. The autumnal forests are similar to the other forests in Zone 1, but they feature trees in autumnal phases and colors. It seems like you'll be able to find special vegetation such as cattails and pumpkins in this biome, and the grass also takes on more of an autumnal orange color. There doesn't appear to be much else of note about this biome, but it sure is pretty. It's probably my favorite biome if I had to pick. The Enchanted Forest is a name I'm giving to this one biome we see in this one screenshot of a glowing blue forest. It also appears in some of the clips in the gameplay video that they revealed shortly after the game was saved, the one I just analyzed in my last video. One of the outdated Hytale wikis suggests this is not a biome of its own, but rather part of the autumnal forests. I suppose it's possible, as both of them feature a heavy dose of mushrooms. Then again, this screenshot is what any forest would look like to a player under the influence of the wrong kind of mushrooms. This screenshot shows us a forest teeming with bioluminescent plant life, not unlike the kind we'll talk about later when we get into Zone 4, all glowing blue and violet. Nothing else is known about this biome or sub-biome for now. Zone 2. The Howling Sands. Zone 2, or the Howling Sands, is themed around the element of wind, making it arid. It heavily incorporates sand and sandstone. You might think that a sandy zone wouldn't have as much variety as Zone 1, but it might just surprise you with its gorgeous and wild terrain generation. Not to mention some of the fantastic structures we've seen so far from this area. Deserts are the main thing that embodies Zone 2, giving you sloping dunes of sand with stone mesas that protrude out into the sky. Outside of being flat, sandy land, the deserts of Orbis seem to be fairly small transitional areas between Zone 1 and the mesas and savannas of Zone 2. Speaking of which, savannas are grassy environments with evenly spaced trees, both at sea level on flat foundations and atop complicated mesas and mountains. This is where you'll find the dwellings of the Ferens, small fox-like humanoids that appear to be allied with the likes of the Player, Gaia, Quebecs, etc., but I think seem less socially inclined than the Quebecs. They were supposedly formerly enslaved by the other main faction of Zone 2, which we'll get into, but it's unknown if this lore will ultimately survive in early access launch. Unlike Quebecs, they build their structures on the soil of Zone 2 out of available woods and fibers. The Oasis. The Oasis is a biome that appears to consist of pools of collected rainwater rather than atop springs of underground water plains. It looks quite pretty, but notably smaller than most biomes and could almost be considered more of a terrain feature. Skerrick Mounds. Skerrick Mounds are the homes of the hostile insectoid Skerricks, which are the species I mentioned may have enslaved the Ferens before they rebelled. They're similar to termite mounds if I'm not mistaken, but I'm sure as hell not googling them to find out. A lot of the action for these termite-like mounds appear to exist underground rather than inside the mound itself, as we see a lot of gameplay clips of the player fighting Skerricks off in an underground area. Skerricks seem to like dwelling in caves, I guess. Zone 3, the Whisperfrost Frontiers. Zone 3, or the Whisperfrost Frontiers, is themed around the element of water, or mostly ice and snow to be specific. It's a frigid and mountainous landscape full of chilling threats and gorgeous views. Seeing as it's themed around water and is generally mountainous terrain, it's likely you'll see a number of streams and sources here as well. The pine forest is full of dirt. Just kidding. Pine trees, obviously. There are pine trees, rivers, and ferns. The soil is tougher and perhaps more difficult to farm on, but the grass is a slightly different hue, looking a little bit cooler than the green grass you'd see in Zone 1. You'll also find camps of the corrupted human faction that is the Outlanders here. If you're not familiar with the Outlanders, basically they're a group of humans who were outcast after they were corrupted by the void magic of the game's main villain, Varen. It seems like they like partaking in occult rituals, and much like the Quebecs, they have different forms they like to take, like the Berserker. Now they partake in occult rituals and probably raiding in order to maintain their power. Snowy Pine Forest. Snowy Pine Forest may not be a biome of its own per se, as there doesn't seem to be much separating from the regular pine forests of Zone 3. It might be more of a feature that appears in a varied pattern on the pine forest, or a sub-biome of some kind. The only other thing that comes to mind is that it's possible the caves below this parts of the pine forests where snow appear might be different, but we haven't seen anything to indicate that's the case. Snowy mountains are much like the mountains seen in Zone 1, but with a lot more snow. Who'da thunk? Not every mountain in Zone 3 is completely covered in snow, but it seems like most of them have at least some snow on them. There are also just generally more mountains in Zone 3 than in Zone 1, so they have more frequent peaks, and some are much broader. If I had to guess, the Ice Dragon, once implemented and configured in the game, will probably nest atop these mountains. The moorlands, which may be called the Boreal Reach per new information, are the flatter, more earthly lands between the mountains and pine forests. There are narrow rivers and streams with icy banks running through them, and animals like rams, penguins, and polar bears. They overall remind me of Death Stranding if you've seen some of what the environments in that game look like. Snowy caves lie beneath most of Zone 3, with specialized glowing icy blue mushrooms and ice crystals in walls. There's a clip of a player exploring the caves of Zone 3 where lit braziers dot their path, but it's hard to say if these generated naturally or if the player placed them there before. We also see a structure in a snowy cave in this clip, which is very interesting. It appears to be a mining facility, but the thing that might be even more eye-catching is the snow passively drifting down into the caves from the surface on the right. There's likely other things that make these caves unique, given they have a particular aesthetic and the subterranean areas of each zone seem to have special themes, mobs, and generation. We just don't know much about these ones yet. The Frozen Coasts. The Frozen Coasts are the newly confirmed name for the region or biome where the Moorlands or Boreal Reach meet the shores of Zone 3. We'll see lots of glacial ice formations and sheets. Otherwise, there's not a lot known other than what we see in the photo that Simon shared today. Zone 4. The Devastated Lands. Zone 4, or the Devastated Lands, is themed around the element of fire. This is pretty obvious when you look at it because it's a horrifying scorched earth sort of environment. Think Fallout. There's rivers of lava and fortresses of death. It seems like some horrible tragedy was inflicted upon this land in the past, presumably as part of some conflict between the factions of Orbis. Most of what makes Zone 4 interesting is its vertical variety, which we'll get into. The Devastated Lands, which seem to include a biome or region called the Basalt Peninsula, and comprise the surface of Zone 4, feature very little flora, which is likely because they're covered in ash, lava, and fire. There's a lot of war-centric structures, like fortresses and outposts made out of dark stone. There's bits of dead shrubbery and elemental creatures born out of flame. Whilst the majority of this landscape is made up of the fiery plains, in between that you'll find volcanoes. They're like mountains, but cooler. If you don't have a precious enchanted ring to dispose of, I can't imagine there's many reasons to climb to the top of these geological terrors, but if I had to venture a guess, I would assume that these are going to be the homes of fire dragons once they're implemented into the game. I assume it's from these volcanoes that all rivers of lava run, but hard to say for sure. Here's where things get interesting. The Devastated Caves are the first layer of subterranean space below the Devastated Lands. You might have noticed the similarity in the names there. There's probably some lava running down to this level and maybe some volcanic crystals. We don't know much else, and I don't believe we have any photos we know specifically to be from this level of cave. Most of this is just based on this one piece of concept art. But for the most part, these appear to be pretty regular caves, just with some extra lava and various terrifying creatures involved. But not much else is known, other than these appear to be mostly pretty regular caves, just meshed with elements of the Devastated Lands from up above. The Protected Caves are what I'm calling the layer of caves below the Devastated Caves, as they don't have a known name and are more likely a gradually changing extension of the Devastated Caves rather than an entirely distinct biome. We could expect more plants and water, less lava, and perhaps less hostile fiery demon mobs. Think something like those bits of caves in Minecraft where those glowing berries grow. The Slothian jungles lie in the next level of caves. This is where you start to see more of the jungle-like environments the race of humanoid sloths known as the Slothians call home. Their ways and role in the game are mysterious, but they seem to have comfortable, Polynesian-inspired homes. While they seem largely peaceful, we have seen one wearing leafy armor in a recent screenshot. The caves in which they dwell at this level are a little bit more peaceful. You'll see almost no lava, but you'll see lots of water and plant life. You might see some different fauna cropping up here as well. The Forgotten Jungle. The Forgotten Jungle is the lowest level of Zone 4 and perhaps the most exciting biome in the game. It may feature multiple biomes for that matter. It's full of dense jungle foliage and bioluminescent prehistoric fauna such as T-Rexes, raptors, and others. I did a video covering all of the dinosaurs that have appeared in the game so far if you want to check that out. The Slothian villages probably also exist at this level too. Supporting all of the additional plant life is an abundance of water in the form of waterfalls and underground lakes. Some of the plant life is also bioluminescent, resulting in most of the light available to the player in what is an otherwise very dark space. This whole area is like if Jurassic Park met Avatar, and I swear I mean that as a compliment. That's all of the specific biomes that we know belong to a specific zone, but we have a few loose odds and ends to take care of. There's the Ghost Forest biome, which has yet to be connected to any of the existing zones. Personally, given the description of the blog post it hails from mentions a tragedy, and the screenshots include a lot of ash and embers, I think this is pretty clearly a biome in the devastated lands of Zone 4. The name is probably figurative, but seeing as the combat gameplay video did include some kind of ghost or spiritual apparition, it's possible there will be ghosts here. Other than that, we just don't know much. Zones 5 and 6. There are 2 more zones that won't be in the game for early access launch, and probably won't be for a while longer. Zone 5 is themed around the element of lightning and is rumored to feature floating islands. Zone 6 is themed around the element of void, but no particular terrain is known for it at this time. Both of these zones appeared in an old piece of concept art showcasing what the zones were meant to look like overall, but they got cut out of the new engine, and now they've been cut out of the old engine as well. Nothing was ever really developed for them, but there's probably some art and documentation. So I wouldn't expect these anytime in the near future. Weather. Different biomes are likely to include some different types of weather, with many of them using the same types. There's rain, which I'm sure can fall in Zone 1 at the very least, though the wiki suggests it can occur in Zones 3 and 4 as well. The oasis we've seen generated in Zone 2's deserts implies the occurrence of rain, but doesn't necessarily mean we'll see it come down ourselves. Zone 1 has fog that changes color and thickness depending on the biome you're in, green in the swamp, purple in the enchanted forest, so on and so forth. Zone 2's got sandstorms, of course. I imagine these might move or damage the player the same way the ones in Terraria do. Zone 3 seems to have both regular snowfall and snowstorms, but we don't know if these will place snow on the ground or negatively affect the player in some way. For the time being, we've only seen the way they look. There's also cosmetic Aurora Borealis events in the skies of Zone 3. Zone 4 doesn't have any known weather types, but perhaps the volcanoes erupt in some capacity, past the main continent. Beyond the shores and beaches of Orbis are oceans, deep oceans, and then the Infinite Lands, where terrain generation may not follow the zone system detailed so far. Infinite World Gen has also been disabled by default according to Simon, but can be re-enabled in the settings. That, or it was not functional, but now it is. Either way, it appears like it'll be in the game for early access launch. Conclusion. That's pretty much everything we know about the biomes in Hytale. There's a lot we still don't know the particulars of, such as mobs, structures, and specific terrain features, factions present, and some of the underground areas for zones 2 and 3. I think the world of Orbis, or whatever it is we're exploring during early access, be it the echoes of Orbis or otherwise, looks fantastic. And I'm curious to learn how this World Gen V2 Simon keeps hyping up improves upon what is seemingly already such a cool world to explore. A lot of this information is probably going to be outdated when the game launches, or soon after if it isn't already. Some of it was pulled from the 2 Hytale wikis, but a lot of it's based on me examining in-game screenshots. I hope you found it interesting, informative, and entertaining. If you did, you can like and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see in the next video. Don't forget to favorite and rate 5 stars. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.